Welcome, Motenta people. Shirley Temple represented hope when all was bleak. Her chubby cheeks and a full smile lit the hearts of many and touched the souls of all. Her glee brightened America when it needed light, with her perfect curls bouncing about her head. Shirley knew how much people venerated her. She would say that people in the Depression wanted something to cheer them up, and they fell in love with a dog and a little girl. Yet, she never took their love for granted and was rather inspired to look for positive avenues to impact the people. But little did people know that she carried a darkness within. Shirley Temple, secret behind her smile. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Motenta's channel. Not many people have the honor and prestige of being described as miraculous by the President of the most powerful country in the world, the United States of America. President Franklin D. Roosevelt referred to Shirley Temple as America's little miracle and said, "As long as our country has Shirley Temple, we will be all right." Shirley Temple filled many with life and the whole of America with hope. The chubby-cheeked, curly-haired star radiated an overdose of optimism, which was sorely needed at the time. She was loved across races and adorned the walls of many people. The African Americans would hang her posters in their house. Even historical figures like J. Edgar Hoover, the then FBI boss, that one would think would be immune to sentiment such as this, had a poster in his house. Future pop artist Andy Warhol had one in his Pittsburgh house. Anne Frank drew comfort from Temple's poster in her room as she hid from the marauding Germans. Her influence was so sharp that even prominent gangsters like Bumpy Johnson bought into her as a beacon of hope and positivity. Even he had a poster in this cherub adorning the grim walls of his Harlem apartment. The lovely star had more influence than Hollywood icons like Clark Gable, Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, Humphrey Bogart, Bette Davis, and Judy Garland. This was despite Garland acting in the hit film The Wizard of Oz. People bought into Shirley's films no matter how badly they were made because of her hopeful message. A prominent fan of Shirley would say about the role Shirley played in her films, "The situations were not always great. Her dad dies, her dad is wounded in the Civil War and lost in a hospital, or she gets put in an orphanage. But it always ends positively. She endures through her little trials." That seemed to be the theme of many of the movies. She always had good relationships with the servants and blacks in the movies, during a time when racial integration was unheard of. Her smile drew the world to her. But little did people know that Shirley had to endure pain for that smile they cherished. People would see her on the fleshy lap of J. Edgar Hoover and never know that as a child, Shirley Temple went through rigorous activities that would cripple older stars. During Shirley's time, Hollywood films were made hastily. Sometimes, filming was wrapped up in 2 days. During her brief stint of acting, Temple had more than 40 films, and in 1934, she acted in 12 alone. That many films in those short periods meant there was no room for errors, which is brutal considering kids are prone to errors. If Shirley acted out as a normal kid would, the bosses would send her to a room designated as her punishment box. The room was a small one that had a block of ice in it to make it cold. The young icon endured this for her $25 per day. The situation was so traumatic that Temple would reportedly have nightmares about the room. However, her mind wasn't given time to recover. She would endure brutal rehearsals, despite the times she would need to rest physically. She would dance on an injured foot and show up to the studio the day after she had surgery for a pierced eardrum. Despite all this, Shirley would manage to smile and radiate hope. Her son, Charles Black Jr., would attribute this to his mom's extraordinariness and optimistic nature. In an interview, he said, "She was the most optimistic person you can imagine." Gushing over his mom, Charlie would say, "She was extraordinary." Sadly, this extraordinariness wouldn't save her from the studio bosses who had eyes for her. As this young powerhouse grew older, she became a target for men who were lewd at heart. Studio boss David O. Selznick would reportedly physically pursue Temple to have his way with her. Comedian George Jessel tried to force himself on Temple and got her knee to his groin from his efforts. Sadly, life didn't get easier for this star who made the other people happy. She decided to marry early at 17, thinking that it would prevent men from trying to force her into a situation she didn't like. She married fellow actor John Agar, and it would be one of the most singularly terrible mistakes she would make. John Agar was a beast of a man who loved to test his physical strength on Shirley. What he loved more than physically lording himself over Shirley has to be the booze, although he had a reputation for finding himself in the pants of random women. John Agar took a sick pleasure in causing Shirley physical pain. An insider revealed he would leave her crying night after night. The insider revealed physical attacks got so bad that it got to the point that Shirley thought about killing herself. After one violent fight, she jumped in her car and considered driving over a cliff. However, rather than taking her life, Shirley declared no more and left the marriage along with the daughter she gave birth to in that marriage, Sandra. She would soon meet the man that would give her joy afterward. Hollywood doesn't make them like they used to, and this goes for Shirley Temple, who has achieved things that most Hollywood stars have not. She won the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences' first juvenile award when she was just 6 in 1934. Temple would get a Hollywood Walk of Fame star in 1960, a Kennedy Center honor in 1998, and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Screen Actors Guild in 2005. As if the accolades aren't enough, the American Film Institute would rank her as the 18th of the top 25 females who are great screen legends. This is an especially impressive ranking, seeing that she did most of her acting as a child actor. Born in 1928, her parents would not have envisioned the life that Shirley would have had. She was discovered at her dance school. She was 3 years old by Educational Films Corporation. Soon the company would put her under contract, and she joined the cast of Baby Burlesque, which were short parodies of popular films. The child actors would satirize the roles played by adults in other films. Temple acted as Mae West and Marlene Dietrich. The short films introduced Temple to the world with her curled hair making her stand out. Shirley's mom styled that hair for her and would always make 56 curls for Shirley. While those short films helped begin Temple's journey to stardom, she didn't speak kindly of them when she grew up. Shirley described those films as a cynical exploitation of our childish innocence. When she was 6, 20th Century Fox got her to enter into a contract with them, a feat which would always be otherworldly. A movie contract at 6? That's just beyond spectacular. Temple joined the big leagues with her new contract and started featuring in bigger films. One of those bigger films that shot her to stardom was The Little Colonel, where she and Bill Bojangles Robinson held hands and regaled the audience with a delightful tap dance. In that film, she hooked her audience with her graceful turns. Holding hands with Bill was sensational, as then prejudices were high. She was featured in Bright Eyes, where she would sing On the Good Ship Lollipop, which would become not only popular, but her signature song as well. That song helped further her status as America's beacon of hope. Temple would dominate the world's box office for 4 to 5 years, while dealing with thousands of emails each week. That long box office domination is more than impressive that not only a few stars can boast of having something similar to that. However, the gallant actress would soon lose steam. Interestingly, her studio, 20th Century Fox, played a role in her fall. Fox had previously loaned their star to Paramount, where she was a part of hit films like Now and Forever and Little Miss Marker. When MGM approached Fox to have their star play Dorothy in their upcoming film The Wizard of Oz, Fox refused, and MGM had to look for an alternative in Judy Garland, who became an icon in that film. Fox decided to rival MGM's The Wizard of Oz with their own fantasy film, The Bluebird, which flopped rather spectacularly. As she began to grow older, roles became scarce, and she went from being 12 flicks in a year to barely getting any. However, it's quite possible that her staunch resistance to studio bosses who wanted to sleep with her also contributed to her decline. Her marriage to John Agar, among other factors, killed off her career completely. John was a terrible husband, and Shirley said goodbye to Hollywood after quitting her marriage to John. Also, her role in The Hagen Girl, where she played a love interest to Ronald Reagan's character, completely tanked her career. The audience was not ready for their darling Shirley to play such a role with an older man. By quitting her marriage and Hollywood, you would expect Shirley to live in immediate opulence, but sadly, this wouldn't be the case as her father had squandered the over $3 million that Shirley made. All she had left was just $30. Shirley didn't let this deter her decision to move on with her life. Not long after her divorce, she met Charlie Black, a sweet gentleman who instantly resonated with Shirley's soul. Now Charlie, the businessman and Navy intelligence officer, who served in World War II, hadn't seen any of Shirley's pictures. He didn't have a preconceived notion about Shirley. The two hit it off without external influence. They dated for 12 days when Charlie proposed to Shirley, who wholeheartedly accepted. Within 10 months of engagement, they married. They had 2 kids, Charlie and Lori. After their wedding, her husband was placed in the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. as a Navy lieutenant commander. She tagged along, and it was there that part of her that always wanted to give to the public manifested in a political form. She met prominent people and began to gain interest in politics. As she would reveal in her interview with Stars and Stripes, a military publication, "We lived in Washington, D.C. for 2.5 years. During that time, I was privileged to know many people connected with the Eisenhower administration. We knew some of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. As happens to anyone living in Washington, you get involved in politics. You want to know more, to do more." Shirley would start tearing into books and began to read political publications, such as World Report and U.S. News, more deeply. Shirley began to do more than reading. She began to mobilize action for the Republican Party by helping to raise funds, working with the League of Women Voters, and supporting Ronald Reagan. When she and her husband finally settled down, she did so in Northern California, where she had her 2 kids. After settling down, Temple Black became a little more daring politically. She decided to contest and run for Congress when the Californian Congressman J. Arthur Younger, who represented Shirley's district, died in 1967. Shirley Temple Black was the last person to throw their hat in the ring, and the only female candidate out of 12 candidates running for the office. Her campaign played on people's nostalgia for her past as a child actor. She was already duking it out with more experienced politicians and needed all the assistance she could get to sway voters to her side. The Temple Black team would play Shirley Temple's signature song, "On the Good Ship Lollipop," at different campaign grounds. Sadly, Shirley would lose in that election, as she came in second with around 34,000 votes to Paul N. McCloskey. That loss wasn't much of a setback. It rather brought her to the attention of political giants. Henry Kissinger noticed her at a party where she was talking about Africa in 1967. Richard Nixon was so impressed by her performance that in 1969, he appointed her as a member of the U.S. delegation for the UN's 24th General Assembly session. The eloquent Shirley would speak passionately about rights belonging to refugees, the environment, and the issues facing the aging population in that assembly. This heralded her journey to becoming a diplomat. When Richard Nixon left office, Gerald Ford in 1974 appointed her as an ambassador to Ghana. After 2 years, in 1976, she returned to the U.S., where she was appointed the Chief of Protocols, which would see her head the training of new envoys. She would joke about her new role in a New York Times interview, where she said, "We teach them how to get used to being called ambassador and having Marines saluting. Then on day 3, we tell them what to do if they're taken hostage." Unfortunately, during the Jimmy Carter administration, her political journey was interrupted. This was only temporary, as her former co-lead Ronald Reagan, in that film that both ended their careers, The Hagen Girl, became the president. During the Reagan years, she became the co-head of the training seminars the United States held for ambassadors. During the following Bush administration, President Bush asked Shirley to take on the position of the United States ambassador to Czechoslovakia. This position was a distinguished one, usually left for career diplomats, and before her, only men had become the ambassador to Czechoslovakia. She was the first woman to hold the time. For Shirley Temple to hold that position was a testament to her ability as a diplomat. Henry Kissinger praised Shirley as he described her according to the Times, saying, "She was very intelligent, very tough-minded, very disciplined." These are high praises from one of the most prominent political figures in United States history. After over 20 years of illustrious service for the U.S., Shirley Temple Black attained the rank of U.S. Foreign Service Officer. She loved serving the public. She would tell Stars and Stripes, "I like a life in public service. The pay's lousy, but other rewards, personal rewards, are great." Despite the challenges life threw at Shirley, she remained resolute. Sleazy bosses who wanted to sleep with her, a terrible first marriage, a father who stole from her, and a mastectomy, Shirley smiled in the face of it all. This part of Shirley helped her get through life and not be weighed down by the bad side of life. This is a lesson we can all learn from Shirley. Though times may be challenging, we should never give up hope. So Shirley would live as a persona of hope, up until her death on February 10, 2014. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Shirley Temple has endured much cruelty in her life. As a child star like her, Judy Garland's life was extraordinary. Why was Judy Garland forced to modify her body? Find out from this video.